Ooh, another white boy with a podcast. Pronouns, Jim Bro. Another white boy with a podcast. You want to see the video? It went viral.
Hi Gains Gurus and welcome to TMGP, the Muscle Growth Podcast, episode 36. I am your host, Roscoe, and today we are welcoming Emanuel Pescari onto the show for part 2 of his 2-part series. Emanuel Pescari is a highly accomplished Austrian strongman, widely regarded as one of the top competitors in the under 105kg category. Born on June 12, 1990, he has made an indelible mark in the world of strength sports since beginning his competitive career in 2017. His exceptional feats of strength have earned him numerous titles, including Austria's Strongest Man in the Open class in 2022 and 2023, as well as Europe's Strongest Man in the under 105kg class in 2023. He has also claimed 3 consecutive Austria's Strongest Man in the under 105kg titles from 2017 to 2019 and secured silver at the 2023 official Strongman Games in the under 105kg World Championship. Beyond his national and continental victories, Pescari has demonstrated his dominance on the world stage. He secured 3rd place at the World Log Lift Championship in Lithuania and holds the European under 105kg log lift record with an astounding 180kg lift, later becoming the first in his class to press a 190kg log, a world record. His ability to compete against athletes in the open weight class, despite being in the under 105kg category, underscores his incredible power and versatility. Additionally, he set the under 105kg European Atlas Stone record with a 200kg lift and has achieved a 350kg deadlift with a suit and straps in competition. In addition to his competitive success, Emanuel Pescari is also a strength coach and a movement and performance therapy specialist. His expertise extends beyond lifting as he is dedicated to helping others optimize their strength and movement through specialized therapy. His participation in team events like the Germany vs. Austria team competition, where he secured a 2nd place finish, further highlights his ability to excel in diverse strongman challenges. Pescari's remarkable strength, technical skill, and dedication to the sport make him a standout figure in the strength and fitness community. Whether dominating the competition floor or coaching others to achieve peak performance, he continues to inspire and redefine the limits of strength. In today's episode, we dive into a wide range of insights. Some of the topics include genetics, including myostatin, follistatin, the superhero gene, and Eddie Hall; the Slater stone, Emanuel being the only one to lift the 200kg and the 220kg at that gym with the big stones; the importance of neck training, spine training, the best posture or position being the next one, neck muscles being armor for accidents and for being strong to be able to absorb force at the neck area. Strength and muscle is the best protection. More muscles is the same as being more prepared. Spinal flexion, extension, the infamous dead pig study, spine flexibility, the spine having lots of muscles, muscle functions, contracting and lengthening. Motion is lotion. Bracing examples other than the traditional bracing, the Valsalva maneuver, power breathing, blacking out and bursting blood vessels from heavy lifts, gradual progression including after an injury, tips to regress certain movements, the goal being able to get full range of motion, pain-free, Emanuel's gym split, isometric training, exploring your physical capabilities, having fun, learning a skill, and dominating. and so much more. Get ready for a truly informative episode. Quick, shameless self-plug. I am starting to upload consistently on Reps with Roscoe on YouTube, so check that out for some epic fitness edutainment content. A little disclaimer. This show does not contain medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Muscle Growth podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect my beliefs or the stance of the podcast. While we aim to provide valuable insights and information, it's important to approach all topics with critical thinking. I encourage you to do your own research, consider multiple perspectives, and form your own conclusions. Healthy discussion is always welcome, and I'm happy to engage with listeners in the YouTube comment section to continue the conversation. Lastly, don't forget to follow us on all major social media platforms, including Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. Find us at the Muscle Growth Podcast and myself at Reps with Roscoe.
Have you ever gotten your genetics tested? Not. I think you should, because you'd probably find some interesting things there. Like, for example, depending on your genetics, it could tell you what you were like naturally born to do, like with your genetics, whether you were born to be a long distance runner or a strength athlete. And I think yours would probably say, strength athlete. I know Eddie Hall has the genetic mutation. Apparently, it's called the superhuman gene, where he puts on muscle very easily because he has low levels of follistatin, I think, something like that. And so he can gain myostatin. That's the one. Follistatin is the one helping. Yes. Okay. That's the one. Myostatin. And thanks for correcting me there. And basically, he has low levels of that, so he can easily accrue muscle tissue, apparently. And that's a genetic aspect of it.
Interesting. I have to look for that.
Yeah, definitely. You might have the same thing, which is really cool. I mean, to be the strongest man in Austria and probably and worldwide in some things, you've definitely got to have some kind of edge. That's so cool. Sorry, and excuse my ignorance, but what's the Slater stone?
The Slater stone is a special kind of stone, of Atlas stone, where usually Atlas stones are around, you can say, 19 to 22 inches. That's already quite wide, in diameter. So that's around 22 is roughly 50 centimeters in diameter, if I'm not mistaken. So 20 is around 40 or almost 40. And the Slater stones are 24 inches. So they're 60 centimeters in diameter. So they're huge. And so far, we have in Austria, in that gym in Vienna, we have Slater stones from 160 already. So 160, 180, 200, and 220 are Slater stones. And so far, I was the only one who lifted the 200 and the 220. And I don't even know if there are many, even open weights, who did the Slater stones above 200.
No, you're incredibly strong. So well done on that.
Yeah, thank you.
What's the sorry to jump around a little bit here, but what's the importance of neck training?
Yeah, so neck training is a strange one, because if you're looking back into the history, neck training was like pretty normal for most of the guys. They did hardcore stunts with neck bridges, loaded neck bridges. There was the Schwarz lift. A Schwarz lift is basically nothing else than getting actively into a neck bridge through your neck or with your head, and holding a weight in your hand, for example. So not already getting into position, because most of the time it was also done. You got first into position into a neck bridge or into a restless bridge, how it's called. And after you did some kind of pullover where you pulled the bar, and after you did some kind of presses or something like that, or just hold the bar or the weight, or made some other kind of stunts, there is now some video going on from, I think, a Russian again from the 80s or 70s, where he's like going into a neck bridge and holding 1,000 pounds on his feet as well, so on his knees. They're stacked, some kind of stuff. Many people are coming. So there is a crazy video going around now on social media, and he's just holding that in a neck bridge. Plus, he's holding even a weight on his hands, and I think even someone is coming and sitting there. So it's crazy. And back then, so more than 100 years ago, it was kind of normal, because strength training, or many looked at strength training more to like a means for helping their other stuff, like we are doing today with our sports. Strength training is helping to get you actually better for the sport which you are doing. And many wrestler and because wrestling was very popular back then, like Greco-Roman wrestling and stuff like that, they knew, okay, but we need a strong neck to not get any injuries, not get any not any to lose consciousness and stuff like that. And so neck training was really important, and there was a lot of books and articles back then written about the neck training. And somewhere throughout history, we lost this idea and this thought to training our neck. And if you're looking now, there's more and more evidence coming, especially like for team sport athletes, for rugby or football and stuff like that, that if you are training your neck, you can reduce a lot of injuries. You can reduce the risk of getting how is this called when you're losing your consciousness?
Concussion.
Yeah, concussion. And just also like if you're looking, because I'm working sometimes also with people who are in pain, people who are struggling with niggles and stuff like that, and with like a lot of tension in somewhere in their body. And many people have like a lot of headache, a lot of here are pretty tight, pretty tensed up and everything. And many times if you are training a bit your neck, it doesn't have to be a neck bridge, and I'm not suggesting or recommending you to jump straight into a neck bridge if you are not used to this kind of training, but you can also train with a neck harness, or you can just start simply with your head or on the wall and stuff. There are a lot of progressions you can. Back then, in the past, they also did for beginners to just start with isometric contractions, so to push against your head in front, on the side, behind, or with a towel. A towel is also a good option, how you can do an isometric contraction for your neck. And many people who have like a tensed up traps and shoulder area, neck area, or getting headache, they most of the time are just tensed up because their neck is just too weak, basically, and they're not even using their neck either. Most of the time they're just in one certain position, and you don't want to be always in one certain position because there is not one good posture. I know one physio from Germany. I really like his quote. He's always saying the best posture is always the next. And that's also the same principle for basically everything, so there is no certain position, and you want always to move. And even your neck has, like the spine, so many possibilities of movement. That's why you should train it, maybe at the beginning, not with weight, maybe later with weight, because progressive overload and stuff. But movement definitely helps to get rid of certain things, especially stuff like headaches or tensed up necks and shoulders.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So I've recently, because of people like yourself and Alex Sterner, recently just added neck training as one of my exercises to one of my days. So I'm just playing around with it, trying, like you said, having the weight on the head and then just going side to side. And I look ridiculous, but I don't really care how I look, because I think, like you said, it's probably quite a useful one that's neglected by. I'm just putting out a random number, but I think 90 to 99% of people training, I don't see neck training all that often. I'm the only one who does it at my gym, which is pretty big. Or at least I'm the only one I see doing it. Maybe people do it at home. or something. But
Yeah, and
you know,
if you're looking at it, from even from an accident perspective, if you're getting into an accident, and I don't wish anyone an accident or something like that, but just think about your most
vulnerable.
vulnerable part. Thank you.
There you go.
Is pretty much your neck, because
Yeah.
you have here not really a lot of muscles. Your spine, your cervix is quite, your cervical spine is quite open, and it's like really easily getting injured, especially in a car accident or stuff like
Yeah.
that, and wouldn't you want to get some kind of armor around this vulnerable spot? And this armor is just your muscles, So if you're building your neck muscles, if you're building here a bit everything, you will be a lot safer. And it doesn't even have to be an accident, Maybe you're slipping and you are falling, and somehow your head is tilting, or maybe someone is coming and punching you if you're doing some kind of sport or whatever. You never know. And
You never know.
muscles can, or your kids, where sometimes when I'm playing with my kid and he's jumping around and stuff, you want to be prepared, and the more muscles you have and the stronger these muscles are, and the more you train certain movements, doesn't matter, regardless how they look, the better you will be prepared for anything.
More muscles, less problems.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So that actually takes us really nicely from the neck into the spine. So spinal flexion and spinal extension and all the other kinds of spinal movements that 90, again, I'm putting out random numbers. I don't know what they actually are, but most people say, oh, you can't bend your spine, the dead pig study, all that kind of stuff. Can you please shed some light on that? I know you've got a very flexible spine and it's very capable of, you do huge amounts of extension and flexion, and your spine looks fine. So well done.
Yeah.
I guess you're not a dead pig. So that's crazy.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's exactly the same principle, like I mentioned before, with being always in the same posture. It's also the same for doing always the same movement. Why do you think people who are having a desk job, do they have problems with their shoulders and maybe with the upper back or even lower back? It's because they're always stuck in this one movement and in this one position. Maybe they are moving here in this position, but over a time, if you're doing this, and you have to think about each movement like a repetition, because maybe this will bring some people getting a light bulb a moment, that every movement you are doing is one repetition. Now think how many repetitions you are acquiring of one certain movement over the day. And now think how many repetitions you are acquiring over a week, over 1 month, over a year. Of course, there is an accumulation effect, or an accumulative effect, because everything is stacking together. And the problem with this, I forgot the exact name, how it was, but there is some kind of acronym, and it's, I think, called Kaizen or something like that, that everything what accumulates is getting more at the end. So every day accumulating 1 rep at the end of the week is not 7, it will be 8, because it accumulates. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So this kind of accumulation effect will just get worse with time if you're just stuck in that one position or in that one movement. And our spine is not a dead pig or a dead corpse or something, So our spine is a living organism, and our spine can adapt. And if you're looking at our spine, there are so many muscles around that spine, and many people are just also only focused on the back of the spine, so only on the erectors, on the QL, on the multifidi, and all the other muscles around there. So there are really a ton of muscles, and they're forgetting all the lats, for example, even the pecs, the core muscles like your abdominals, obliques, the transverse, and they're all part of your of your spine, even your glutes, even your fascia, which is like in your lower back. So everything is somehow connected. So you can't just say, nah, this is bad for your spine. In contrary, your spine needs movement because every muscle has the same function. Every muscle is contracting, so it's shortening and it's lengthening. Why it should be different for half of the muscles which you have in all your body to not be that rule, And your spine. So if we're looking at the function of the spine in general, you have flexion, you have extension. You also have lateral flexion, so to grab something from the floor when you're sitting, basically, and you have rotation. Rotation is really important because you want to be able to whip your ass, when you're going to the toilet. And I know from colleagues of mine, he was a powerlifter. I'm not saying powerlifting is bad, but it's pretty in one plane of motion. And one day he wanted to whip his ass and he got stuck in that position because he got some kind of lumbago or something, so he couldn't move after anymore. And it took him like 1 week or so to get back again into movement. So yeah, you want to be able to have a smooth rotation and to not get stuck in any position. And your spine needs all these movements because they're just like oiling everything. If you're not moving, like in German, we have this word like and there's in English too. You have motion is lotion. And it's basically like that, and why, if you have so many motions, why do you want to avoid everything and just do one motion? Because maybe it's not even a motion, because everyone is recommending you should have a neutral spine and it should be braced as possible and just walk all the time like that. No, that's one option one function of the spine as well, to be able to brace. But you can also brace not only in a neutral position, you can brace in extension, you can brace in flexion, you can brace in rotation. There are many ways to brace. It's not only in neutral. So it's really important to understand.
On that bracing note, can you please explain proper bracing and how to do it? And I think you've made a really important statement there about bracing not only being on your heavy squat, on your heavy deadlift, on your heavy bench, but you mentioned that in our pre-interview kind of video, you mentioned about heavy carries and stuff, and you got to brace the entire kind of time. And that actually opened me up a little bit about the whole bracing technique, because I thought you have to do it and you have to re-brace every time you go down for a squat, that kind of thing. And then there's also people saying you need to hold your breath like you're going underwater, that kind of stuff. But I actually popped the vessels in my eyes the one time doing that for a few reps, and literally had it was quite bad, and a nosebleed, and it was quite bad actually. So can you maybe help me not do that again, but still make sure that I'm braced properly, and the listeners as well, because I think bracing, like you said, is so important. And it's not just when you're in neutral, or whatever neutral is. It's you can brace when you do a big anything, when you're doing a carry, when you're doing all kinds of different movements. It's not just in your deadlift position, now you brace, or in your squat position, now you brace. Can you elaborate on that and explain how to do it properly?
Yeah, so there are different bracing modalities, if you want to say so. There's, of course, and we have to think about, okay, what exactly, and here again, it's like with strength training, what exactly do we want to achieve and what exactly do we want to do? If it's for some max effort, for some max effort repetition or attempt, yeah, maybe you want to have some kind of neutral spine or maybe a flexed spine, depends on the movement, and to brace as hard as possible and to use the Valsalva maneuver. And that's where it's interesting to understand and to get somehow the disassociation, basically, of bracing is basically nothing else than an isometric contraction. But what we can do, and what, for example, the Valsalva maneuver is is breathing, because the Valsalva maneuver is breathing and isometric contraction in once. What you can also do is not only do the Valsalva maneuver, but you can also do power breathing. And power breathing is nothing else than just put your tongue against the rooftop of your mouth, the rooftop of your mouth, and just exhale, just quickly, just shortly. So just like that, you will feel, okay, you are actually now bracing a bit, your core is getting engaged. This is also some kind of bracing. It's called power breathing, and you can do this quickly, and that's what we have to learn and to see. Okay, bracing is not actually just the Valsalva maneuver, because everyone is talking about that, and everyone thinks about, okay, that's actually bracing, but it's not. It's just one part of bracing, and you can combine these methods as well. Like, for example, we talked about that, and what I like to do for like carries, if it's like really a heavy carry, I really at the beginning I want to fully brace and to do the Valsalva maneuver to start like really in the most compact and stable way as possible. And once I have this position and I raised, for example, a yoke, and I'm standing with the yoke, I'm actually decreasing or letting my breath out, and I'm starting to use a more power breathing style of breathing. So I'm doing tss, tss, tss. I'm inhaling in this position and I'm exhaling, and this allows me to still stay as stable as possible. Maybe not as stable as with the Valsalva maneuver, but I don't need that because I need movement. And so I'm trying to actually keep the isometric contraction as high as possible while I'm also breathing. Because the problem, like you had also with the popping vessel in your eye, after a while, if you're just doing the Valsalva maneuver and you are doing like 5 repetitions, 6 repetitions, you will be like exhausted, not because the weight is so heavy, but just because you don't have any oxygen more. And it's not even the problem of oxygen, it's the problem of getting rid of the CO2, so which is actually accumulating in your body. And to get rid of that CO2, you need to breathe, but you're actually not breathing because you're all the time that's what you're doing all the time. How do you want to get the proper oxygen in if you can't even get rid of the CO2 what you're accumulating in your body, and what all the waste products are getting produced in your body from all your cells, So this is something what you have to think about. And of course, the blood pressure will go through the roof. With power breathing, it's not that high because it still allows you to breathe a bit more, and it still allows you to be a bit more adjustable. And the good thing is also, in any position in which you are going, like even, for example, if we are taking a sandbag pickup or a stone pickup, I'm in a very flexed and flexed spine position, so bent over position, but I still have to brace somehow. Of course, I will kind of brace, keep my breath and go down. But when I will be lifting, I will be again doing the same of starting to exhale and starting to somehow get more breath cycles in, maybe in a more power breathing style. But I will not be as rigid, because rigidity and stability, they are important, but you want to have them on a spectrum of movement and not only on one end of the extreme to be as rigid as possible, because after you're not able to move anymore, And the problem also with that is, and that's a topic which I'm thinking now the last 2 days, and I want to even make a post about that, is even your technique is changing all the time. Maybe you're not feeling it, maybe you're not really realizing it, but how your body weight fluctuates from day to day, that's also how your technique fluctuates from day to day, because leverages and joint positions will be different. Maybe not to a huge extent, but just if it's 1-2 millimeters, just if it's just a bit, it's still another position which you are maybe not used to it. And if that position is getting a bit too far out of hand, you still want to be able to brace and to be strong in that position, and not to always force you in one certain position and avoid breathing, basically, because especially if you have to carry something, you need to breathe after a while, and you still want to be able to still be as stable as possible. So that's why I like to think about bracing more about like, okay, that's actually an isometric contraction, but with my breathing and with the diaphragm, I'm helping my stability and my core and my rigidity to be still somewhat smooth and to be able to move with that added and stability and rigidity. I hope this makes sense so far.
That makes perfect sense. So do you breathe through your mouth when you're doing the carries, for example? The power breathing, is that through your mouth? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then for myself, when I want to go squat heavy again, or heavy for me, should I do a big breath in and try and expand as much as possible, and then go down? This is what my doctor told me. So you never know whether they're correct or not. And then as I come up, as I'm coming up, start letting the breath out. Is that what you'd say, or is that not good advice?
Yeah, usually most of the time, typical Valsava maneuver is you are getting as much inhale as possible. You're trying to expand not only your belly, but your whole core. So you don't want only your belly, but you also want to feel like your backside of your core is getting like full, and you are keeping the tension. This tension you have to hold actively. So this is also part of the bracing, so it's actually a contraction or an isometric contraction, basically. So you're just contracting your core, and you can do that even. So bracing is even, you can brace now, you're just trying to contract your core, but you're actually not contracting your core. That's also some kind of bracing. And when you're going into the hole, when you're coming approximately halfway up, you are starting to slightly breathe against they're saying against your closed trachea, basically, like your where you're breathing through. Like you don't want to fully exhale in once, but you want to let it slowly out. So,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think there's a lot of practice that I need to do with that, but I'm excited for it.
And if you're doing just one, also some advice, if you want to do like more repetitions, just take your time in between the repetitions. If you need like full stability and want to use the Valsava maneuver, because you need the oxygen. If not, you will just black out, or you will pop again something. So maybe you still will pop again something, because of blood pressure. But at least you will not black out, and it will not. You will be able to continue a bit longer.
So have you blacked out, and have you popped something before in your training or in a competition?
Say again?
Have you blacked out before, or have you popped something in a competition or in training?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think I blacked out twice. I didn't fall. I just, everything got black, and it was twice on a log. So I cleaned the log. I had the log on my chest up, and out of a sudden everything got black. So I dropped after the log, and I regained my consciousness back, basically. And I popped like 2 or 3 times or so something in my eye. So that's normal. And I had twice or so nose bleeding a bit, but not much.
Yeah. And did you also see stars?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's always crazy. Like you see it in the movies and stuff, and I was like, it's nonsense. But I was like, okay, I see now.
Now, sometimes even after a really heavy deadlift or so, it's like, everything is turning.
Okay, good. So I am training hard enough, maybe.
Yeah, I'm
Getting
quite
it.
sure.
Okay, cool. That's good. Okay, and then I know we're running out of time, but just some of the last few things about gradual exposure to weight, like after an injury, and then also gradual exposure to increasing weight, a gradual load progression, that kind of thing. Can you just briefly touch
Yeah.
on the importance of doing it gradually? And then I assume you do it gradually, even though you get to world record levels, but you probably don't go from an injury directly to. I mean, you did it in 6 weeks, but maybe most people shouldn't do that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I had already quite a few injuries, unfortunately, and I got myself into this also with help, and I learned everything from this guy. His name is Andreas Leib. He's one guy from Germany. We are working actually now together, so he has some education going on where he's educating, he's calling them expert of healing movement. And I also did his education, and he introduced me to a lot of these things, and I also learned after myself this, and of course, personal experience, So the thing is, if you are getting injured, most of the time you want to get as fast back into training and moving as possible. It depends of the movement, it depends of the injury, of course, but some kind, and this is important to understand, some kind of movement is still possible. The thing is just, okay, you have to think about what is possible and what is still pain-free, because you want to work in a pain-free area. You don't want to get into pain. You don't want to make everything worse, of course, But movement is that very one thing which helps you heal faster, and it doesn't have to be something hardcore. No one is saying you need to do no one is even saying you need to do something special, because there are many people claiming on social media, yeah, you have to do this special method to get blood flow and stuff like that. Actually, no, it's enough if you're moving just a bit. If you have some kind of injury here, it's enough if you're moving here a bit your arm, for example. You can target specific muscles or areas a bit more, of course, but there's nothing special. What is special is you want to, and this is important to understand, you want to, if you can squat down, let's say, because you have some, or let's take my hamstring injuries, So I injured my hamstrings, I couldn't deadlift. The thing is, I had a deadlift ladder coming up and I had power stairs coming up at Europe's Strongest Man in 6 weeks. So I was like, okay, what can I do? So I tried to bend down to see, okay, how far can I get? So I could get with my hands, with straight legs, only to, not even to my knees. So this was a bit difficult. But this range was pain-free until I got to my knees. So what I started with a Jefferson curl, just a half Jefferson curl, just light, to get a bit of stretching into the hamstrings and to get again a bit more flexion. Usually I knew, okay, the hamstring is a kind of weird one, because when I'm squatting down, so when I'm standing straight, the length of the muscle doesn't change. When I'm squatting down, the length of the muscle doesn't change, because the hamstring, when the hip is extended, on that side it's shortened, but when the knee is extended, on that side it's stretched. But when I'm squatting down, now on the hip, at the hip it's stretched, and at the knee the hamstring is flexed, so that the length, the actual length of the hamstring doesn't change. So I try to squat. 3 days later or 4 days later, or not, yeah, I think 3-4 days later, I squatted 180 for 8 or 10 reps or something like that. I had no problem. I tried to deadlift. I knew, okay, I can deadlift from the floor. So what can I do? I will do from blocks. But at the beginning, I had to use kind of high blocks, so it was somewhere above the knees, but it was no problem. So I could go up to 200 or 220. I had to be careful because you have to control the weight. This is also something really important. At the beginning, you don't want to have any like explosive movements. Everything has to be controlled, especially the eccentric and the eccentric turnover, or turnaround. So I did block pulls. And for power stairs, I knew, okay, I can, because I didn't have power stairs back then, or a handle to do power stairs. And I'm coming now to that. One alternative is a sumo deadlift. Maybe not a complete sumo deadlift, but just a semi-sumo, so where my legs are a bit closer. I knew, okay, that should be actually possible, because my hamstrings, it's again, sumo isn't that much of a hamstring exercise as it's more like quads and glutes. So I tried it, and it was possible. I couldn't go that heavy because I still had to pay attention, but I could do the movement. And that's how I worked. And I progressed after with time from Jefferson curls to stiff leg deadlifts. And I progressed the height on the block pulls. And yeah, I just did some movements. I was walking. I tried to get a bit more stretch every day to get the range of motion back and everything. And I just loaded the movement in still tolerable range, for my hamstrings, so I'm not getting injured more, and I'm letting myself heal. So you, of course, you need to do something, but you also need to rest somewhere. But you don't want to only rest or to exceed all the work which you are doing. So that was my approach, and that's one of the approaches I'm using quite a lot. What I also like to do is, if I can do a movement, like for example, when I tore my pecs, I could still bench press, and I could still go up to like almost 100 kilo with like not fully torn. I never fully tore something, but it always was partial, sometimes more, sometimes less. But regardless, I could bench press, and I knew, okay, how could I make the bench press more difficult, but I'm still getting a good stimulus. So I added bands on the barbell with hanging weights, which made it quite difficult because there was a lot of instability. But this allowed me to focus like really on a good tempo and on a good technique to work like really slowly and good out of my chest. And because of the added instability, there were also all the time different muscle fibers working. So it was really nice to progress that. So there are quite a few possibilities how you can get back into normal lifting again. You just have to think about, okay, how can I regress certain movements so I can still kind of load them. And the first thing, so the most important thing, what you want to achieve is full range of motion without pain, and after to start to load that range of motion slowly again.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, being smart about it is super important. Doing things gradually, seeing what you can do, and then doing that and a little bit more of that and that and that, rather than stopping everything, doing no movement, no gym. I think that's probably the wrong way to do it. And like you said, motion is motion, movement is key. I love all those things, and I advocate for all that same stuff. And then finally, on the whole, I think you do whole body training where you incorporate hinge, squat, push, pull, core, and remedial. Can we talk a little bit about that? And then just prehab, rehab, isolation, and then I think we'll finish off with just talking a little bit about isometrics, and then that'll be done.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so you want to know something specifically about this scheme?
Yes, so is this the training program that you use, like the hinge, push, pull, full body? Is that kind of your training, or do you have, what is that your split, full body 5 days a week, or?
So I have different kinds of splits how I'm working, but the whole body split is pretty much one of my favorites, which if I'm coaching myself, I'm like to use a lot, or I'm using quite a lot with many of my clients, because it's just so versatile. You can with basically these 4 movements, like if you have how the movements are structured doesn't really matter. Some are preferring to start with the deadlift first, to go to a squat and after to a press. and after to a pull. Some are preferring, because it's like easier for them, to start maybe with the squat, to go after into the press, and to go after into deadlifts, just because some individuals, it's easier for them, or it's more tolerable for them, the deadlift at the beginning, and for others it's just destroying them, so you have to play there around a bit with the structure. But usually if you have some kind of hinge, squat, press, and some pull, you are basically covering all the bases what you need, So depending on the volume, you can either do, most of the time I'm planning 4 days a week. Sometimes maybe a bit more, but 4 times is pretty optimal for most, with a bit of medium volume. So 3 to, or let's say 2 to 5 sets per exercise, So in the end, at the end of the week, you are getting somewhere to around 8 to maybe 20 sets total per exercise. So you are covering quite a lot of muscle groups with that, So there should be enough hypertrophic stimulus, and there should be also enough for the strength gains. The cool thing also about this style is you can, after, in the microcycle which you have, so 1 week, you can alter and focus each day on something else. For example, what I like to use a lot is omnicontraction style of training. So this means we have 1 day focused on eccentric, 1 day focused on isometric, and 1 day focused on concentric. And the last day is some kind of structural balance day, where maybe the structure doesn't look like that, so we don't really have hinge, squat, pull, press, etc. But we have maybe some kind of isolation exercises, or we have maybe some kind of, what I also like to do is like a spinal motion, or spinal movements basically, or like really lengthened biased work, like flat bench curls, where we're really focusing on extending our arms as possible, or stuff like that, like Cossack squats, or something like a Copenhagen planks, something where we are focusing a bit more on structural balance, so like the joints are like getting enough stability and enough range as well, So that's one possibility. Another possibility, what I also like, is to focus, to have like 1 strength day, 1 power day, and 1 hypertrophy day with the whole body system, So on the strength day, it's just normal strength based with like 3 times 5 or 3 times 3 or something like that. On the hypertrophy, maybe we're not doing so much free movements, so free weight movements, but we are doing a bit more machine work, or maybe some lower demanding exercises where we can do maybe a bit more, so we can actually work on vertical press and horizontal presses, on vertical pushes and or vertical pulls and horizontal pulls, so we can play a bit more with that. And on the power day, we have more like something into Olympic lifting style of training, where it's more something like maybe cleans or push presses, or what I like to use also a lot on that day are like unconventional movements, which like 1-hand snatches, or 1-hand jerks, 1-hand deadlifts, hack deadlifts, or something like really odd, basically. So we're just preparing the body for like really different positions and different stimuli, and getting overall ready for basically everything, So I really love the whole body approach. I also have like a bit more like where it's like normal strength and hypertrophy, and after it's like a more conditioning based approach, and a more like running based approach or jumping based approach. So there are many different ways, but it's a really, really awesome tool if you're playing a bit more with the variables and you know how to structure them.
Absolutely. I also really like the full body training. And I just wanted to check the remedial stuff that you mentioned previously. Is that to do with the prehab, rehab, and isolation, or is that different?
Yeah, so that's sometimes I'm calling it remedial stuff. Sometimes I'm calling it structural balance stuff. So that's just something what we are lacking. Like, for example, what I like to use many times in the whole body days as well is to put somewhere something like a side band in there, or some kind of windmill or something like that, where we're covering a bit more bases, maybe also going a bit again into more spinal function work, or stuff like Turkish get up or so, where we're just implementing a bit more whole body coordination and stiffness, so just depends what is needed. Sometimes maybe a bit more tricep work, like because the strongmen need a bit more overhead power, and many are lacking the tricep strength basically, and size. And so a bit more tricep work there, for example, is good. And of course, like, structural balance work is all this stuff which is not, you're really not fancy and no one wants to do, but that's really important, like your external rotations, your trap free raises, maybe your Cuban rotation, yeah, so stuff like that, halberd raises or Copenhagen planks, like I said. So all this stuff which is maybe not so fancy for most of the people, but which are really important just for overall development. And these things are like really important for joint stability and for general structural balance. Sounds maybe a bit odd, but it's exactly that. You want to have some kind of different movements here also. Again, like if we're working a lot into flexion, like if we're pressing a lot overhead, if we're bench pressing and stuff like that, we want also to get a lot more into extension and to bring our hands behind our back and to open up our chest more. So all this stuff I'm taking into consideration, and I'm looking what is needed basically.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. And then to finish off, to talk about the isometrics, you mentioned the static holds. Why do you think that isometric can give muscle stimulus, like muscle growth, or do you think it's only eccentric and concentric that does it? And why don't they study isometric that much in the literature? Why is it all to do about the eccentric, the lengthening? Why don't they have stuff on or at least stuff that I've seen recently, on the isometric so much? Do you think it's just people don't know about the benefits of isometric? And like you mentioned about the GTOs being you able to better them doing the heavy static holds. Why do you think that is?
So I think if you're looking back into history, like around the 50s and 60s, if I'm not wrong now, there came this method of isometric training got like really popular, and that's also the time when power racks developed, and with and many more things, and many people experimented with stuff. And after that period, and even like in Russian literature, they found isometric training to be like really powerful. And back then they did quite a lot of studies, and they found quite a lot of results. And even nowadays they're still doing a lot of studies, but they're just maybe not so published or not so much talked about, because it's more of a performance enhancer rather than a muscle growth method. Of course, like we saw, I'm sure you know this study where they put the leg into maximal dorsiflexion, forced dorsiflexion for 1 hour per day, every day, like in a real hardcore isometric stretch. And they found like a huge muscle growth for that calf, So it's not like isometric training doesn't grow muscle. It does, but not to that extent how normal repetitions are doing it, like dynamic repetitions with eccentric and concentric. And even now there's a lot of debate about, okay, which phase actually builds muscle, because some are arguing about, it's now actually the concentric, and the eccentric is just producing a lot of muscle damage, which of course is true. But we saw also in eccentric studies that even just the pure eccentric training produces hypertrophy, without missing concentric. So it's a bit tricky with all the research to follow them. But so far, there's a lot of evidence about isometric training, but it's more like for performance enhancements. And most of the things are like short based isometric contractions, maximal isometric contractions, like overcoming isometrics. If this is telling you something, that's where you're basically pulling or pushing against an unmovable weight or resistance or whatever. That's, you could, let's say a block pull. You are loading that bar as heavy as possible and you're trying to raise it. You're doing that for 6 seconds. So for 6 seconds you want to produce as much force as possible. That's a huge neurological potentiation method, and even strengthens to some part that very range. And with isometrics you have to pay attention, because isometrics are strengthening not only that range, but even 15% above and underneath that very range. So around roughly a 30% of a range of motion strength increase. So it's a pretty powerful, but it's just that range. So you also have to and especially with overcoming isometrics, you also want to pair it always with something else, like with either a dynamic movement, something explosive, or something heavy, because you want to use that potentiation effect, with longer duration isometrics, like holding a position 30 seconds or something like that, it's a bit more tricky, because there's a lot of accumulation going on of lactate and this burning sensation, and maybe there is some kind of hypoxia there. And it's a bit more difficult because you have to gain a lot of time under tension in that certain position, which after time is just not really possible. If you held like a wall squat for 2 minutes, if you try to do that 3 times, you will not be able to do it, because your legs are just so fried. So that's a bit tricky with why you can't really load that, because you need some kind of mechanical tension, of course, but you can also get that with a longer duration of isometric. It's just longer duration isometrics are a bit hardcore to do over time, because the muscle is fatiguing so fast. Another method which does increase hypertrophy and also mobility are loaded stretches, for example, which are basically nothing else than isometric contractions in end ranges, or in lengthened positions. Like if you're taking a bench press with dumbbells, you can bring the dumbbells here into as much stretch as possible. You are contracting your chest and you're holding that as long as possible. And that weight should be quite heavy. So this position and this kind of loaded stretching, which is more like a eccentric quasi-isometric, because while you are holding, after a time you will increase your range of motion. But this method also does help for hypertrophy. It's just not very popular, because it's not so fun, like lifting weights around. But isometric is really powerful. So for strength and for potentiation and all this stuff, it's even like an analgesic. Like if you have knee pain or if you have some kind of pain somewhere, just do an isometric contraction for like 30 to 60 seconds. And you will see, okay, that pain is going slightly away, and you will be able to perform the movement with less pain or without pain at all. It won't heal it completely, but it's just like if you would swallow a painkiller, so isometric contractions are awesome.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that. So thank you so much for that. And then second last question, who's your favorite character in Dragon Ball Z?
Say again?
Who's your favorite character in Dragon Ball Z?
It's really difficult, because usually I was a Goku guy, but Vegeta is, especially after in Z, like really, not in Z, it's actually more in Super. He got really cool, and Goku got a bit more odd for some reason. I don't know, but in Z, Goku was like really awesome.
Fair enough. And then finally, what parting words of wisdom do you have for our listeners who are looking to embark on their own journey of strength and muscle gain?
So I have my own company, which is called Omnipotence, and I have this slogan of explore, conquer, and dominate. So these four things are exactly what my philosophy is and what I'm also teaching in my education or in my coaching and stuff like that, or what I'm trying to promote on social media is you have so many physical capacities, you have so many abilities which you can develop and you can explore, you also have the possibilities to conquer these things. So if you're just playing around, if you're just exploring new things, it doesn't matter what it is, like for example, I'm learning now rope flow maybe seems a bit funny because it's a rope which you are turning around your body in some strange way, and it's not like jumping rope because you're not jumping above that rope or with that rope, you're just turning the rope around your body, but in many different ways. And it's why I like it, for example, is because you have a lot of spinal movement, a lot of rotation and flexion and extension, and it's going also a bit more into this martial arts type of stuff, or with kettlebell flips or kettlebell juggling and stuff like that. That's also something what I'm doing just to learn this skill and to play around, and there are so many things what you can do with your body, just start somewhere slowly. So explore the things, do them on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be a lot or long, just if you're doing that for like 1 to 2, 3 minutes per day, if you're doing that every day, or if you're doing that for 5 to 10 minutes every second day, that accumulates again, and after a while you will conquer this thing. So you will get used to it, you will have fun, you will be able to play a bit more around with it, you will have some kind of skill, and at the end you can dominate it, you can maybe load it, you can maybe do some really crazy stuff, some, I don't know, some handstands or backflips or whatever, some sprinting. There's a lot of stuff. It's just you have to be open about all the things. You don't have to be too dogmatic about certain things, and just especially about your body. You want to have a long and healthy life, and for this you want also to be able to sustain all the physical attributes which your body has. So you have actually to use them as well, And that's where omnipotence comes into play. You want to be good at everything, It doesn't have to excel at everything, but you certainly have the capacity to do pretty much everything what you want. Maybe there is a cap somewhere to how much you can really do that, or how many things you can really do, but you can certainly build muscle. You can certainly build strength. You can certainly be able to run a certain amount of kilometers or distance or time, You can be able to jump and to play around, and to do many different things. You are able to learn new skills, It doesn't matter if it's kettlebell juggling or if it's like calisthenics or whatever, you have the ability, and you just have to play around with it and to stick with it,
I love that. And I think the ultimate message there, like you said, is you are so capable. And I think that means a lot to everyone listening. Thank you to yourself, one of the most capable people on the planet, maybe of all time. That's a really fantastic message.
Thank you very much.
What a fantastic way to wrap up. Thank you, Emanuel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun.
And your pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the Muscle Growth Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. It helps us grow and reach more people just like you. Don't forget to follow us on all major social media platforms, including Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. Find us at the Muscle Growth Podcast and at Reps with Roscoe. For more insights, exclusive content, and full episodes, visit themusclegrowthpodcast.com. Your support truly makes a difference, so please like, share, comment, and follow. We're grateful for every bit of it. Until next time, keep pushing your limits and staying focused on getting bigger, stronger, and better.